Welcome everyone to Monday Morning Morons for July 8th, 2019. This week, in the honor of Independence Day, because I don't do Thursday Morning Morons, let's begin with some very intelligent and thoroughly thought out reasons why America is not the greatest country in the world. Video. Students say America is not the greatest country on earth. This 4th of July, people across the nation will set off fireworks and spend time with family in celebration of America's independence. But not everyone will be feeling the patriotism. A recent Gallup poll survey shows the number of people who consider themselves proud or very proud to be American is at an all-time low. According to the survey, just 45% of Americans consider themselves to be extremely proud of their nation, while the number of those in the Democrat Party was at 22%, a 10% decrease since last year. Wanting to know whether college students were proud of their country and whether they think it's the best in the world, Campus Reform's Cabot Phillips headed to George Washington University to find out. Now you can go watch the video to be sure I'm not misrepresenting what was said, and I encourage you to do so for the laughs at least, because I'm not going to address every stupid thing they said here. Like for instance, the queer woman apparently doesn't think she'd be free if she lived in Alabama. Yep, your constitutional rights end at the Alabama state line, I guess. Now, some did not agree here, but I'm sure you can guess what the general direction of opinions were. No, they are not proud of their country, and they don't think it's the best. Big surprise, I'm sure. And why? Hold on to your hats, another big surprise coming. Definitely because of our current president, one said, while another flatly stated, I can't be proud of a country that elected Trump. Good little zombies. Orange man bad. America is totally the worst country because we lost an election. And which country do you think is the best? Iceland, because people are happy there. Yep, that's all she knows about the place. So a trumped-up happiness poll she heard about is good enough for her, I guess. Another says Scandinavia in general because, big shock, free healthcare that isn't free, but shh, don't confuse the idiots with reality or anything. And my personal favorite, Sweden. Didn't give a reason, but Sweden, where they make excuses for rapists. Yeah. That's definitely the greatest country on earth. Thing is, this isn't even an isolated incident. I'm not going to force feed you a montage or anything here because, seriously, I can't be bothered to educate people so willfully fucking blind. But by all means, if you think Sweden is the place to be, go there. And be sure to apologize for victimizing your rapists when they're done. As for me, I'll stay right here. America isn't perfect, but it's still the greatest country on earth. For a lot of reasons, but it all starts with the one thing we have that no one else does. Your guaranteed right to say all the stupid shit you want. At least for now, anyway. Florida Democrat says those making fun of members of Congress online should be prosecuted. Democratic Representative Frederica Wilson said people who are making fun of members of Congress online should be prosecuted. The Florida Congresswoman made the comments on Tuesday outside of the Homestead Temporary Shelter for Unaccompanied Children in her home state. Those people who are online making fun of members of Congress are a disgrace, and there is no need for anyone to think that this is unacceptable, Wilson said. The sick means they quoted her directly and didn't change it to make sense. She obviously meant acceptable there. Otherwise, she'd be right. There is no need to think making fun of you is unacceptable, because it isn't. We're totally allowed to do that. We're going to shut them down and work with whomever it is to shut them down, and they should be prosecuted, she added. You cannot intimidate members of Congress, frighten members of Congress. It is against the law. And it's a shame in the United States of America. No, Congresswoman. No, that is not a shame. A Congresswoman who evidently has never heard of the Constitution or the Bill of Rights is a shame. Look, there are many varying opinions on the exact parameters or scope of the First Amendment. That's why we occasionally get Supreme Court cases to address it. However, what you're proposing right now prosecuting people for making fun of elected officials, that has no gray area. The founders were very clear why they wrote it. Our ability to disagree with, challenge, and even mock our government was the exact intent of the free speech clause. For you not to know that is not only alarming, but disgraceful. And while yes, threatening members of Congress, or the president, or judges for that matter, is against the law, mocking you is not. Mocking you is not a threat. Making fun of you is not a threat. Disagreeing with you is not a threat. Hell, calling you derogatory names may be rude, but it's not a threat. You, as at least part of the government, cannot stop us from doing any of these things because, having obtained independence from a king who acted just like you are now, the founders were smart enough to ensure it. So unless you're proposing we eliminate the First Amendment to the Constitution, and seriously, good luck trying to get that shit past the voters through Congress under the president's pen and adopted by 3/4 of the states, until then, sorry pumpkin, we plebs get to make fun of you all we like, and poor little congressional snowflakes just have to deal with it. On to the next one, Bob. Berkeley's Ethics in the Age of Trump course asks if Trump presidency is a threat to democracy. You mean the guy who was elected? No. Pretty sure that's not a threat to democracy. The threat to democracy is coming from the other side, full of deranged psychos who keep trying to manufacture excuse after excuse why we should remove the duly elected president simply because Empress Hillary lost. Those people are a threat to democracy. And while we're on the subject, now might be an appropriate time to remind you that we do not live in a democracy. This is a constitutional republic, not a democracy, and it was designed that way for a very good reason. They did not want mob rule. This is democracy. Mostly the students dismissed the threat to democracy argument, believing that Trump, despite his authoritarian tendencies and disrespect for the Constitution, lacked the brain power to pull off that transformation Kurt said about the last example question. What authoritarian tendencies exactly? You mean like this?
I'm going to be working with Congress where I can to accomplish this. But I'm also going to act on my own if Congress is deadlocked. I've got a pen to take executive actions where Congress won't.
Oh yeah, wrong guy. My bad. Totally fine when he does it, right? Executive law didn't seem to bother you too much then. In fact, you folks never even challenged it. And now you've got a new emperor in the running. If Congress doesn't do what she wants, she's just going to legislate from the Oval Office instead. And you think Trump is the authoritarian in this discussion because he tried to end an executive order that his predecessor wrote? Next, disrespect for the Constitution. Refer to the previous story to see where that shit's coming from. Here's a hint. Not Trump. And you wrap it up with, Trump is dumb. Well, he was smart enough to beat your power-hungry witch, wasn't he? Even after she rigged the primaries just to make sure she got to the election. Perhaps he's not as dumb as you think, huh? I'm done with you. All this nail-biting over Trump is ridiculous. Will he leave office if he loses? Of course he will. You fucking psychos are only asking that question to yet again insinuate that he's a fascist dictator, yet nothing he's done or even tried to do supports that claim. It's amazing to me that you folks see fascist authoritarians everywhere except when they tell you what you want to hear. Do you know how dictators come to power in the first place? By telling people what they want to hear. Beware the promises spoken by silver tongues. If they sound too good to be true, they probably are. Okay, Bob. Toxic masculinity time. Woman accused of drowning boy she tried to drown as a baby 11 years ago. This one comes from Gopher's World over on Minds. Thank you very much for the addition, Gopher's World. A California woman has been accused of drowning a boy she tried to drown 11 years ago when he was a baby, according to reports. Deputies found Jackson Tellness, 12, and his 7-year-old brother, Jacob Ray Tellness, unresponsive in an irrigation ditch full of water Saturday in Porterville, California, according to the Tulare County Sheriff's Office and local media. They were notified that a woman identified as their mother, Sherry Renee Tellness, 45, was acting strangely and had taken them to a field across the street, the sheriff's office said. Tellness was charged with murder in the older boy's death. The younger boy survived, and the sheriff's office said he was in critical condition. She was also charged with attempting to murder Jacob Ray, corporal injury to a child, and obstructing an officer, jail records show. She was jailed without bond. I will never unhear the wails that came out of my mother-in-law when I told her, Jackson and Jacob Ray's aunt Eleanor Brown told whatever television. None of us believed it at first because we found out through an old coworker, and at first it was like, oh yeah, that happened 10 years ago, Brown said. Jackson was 10 months old when Tellness tried to drown him in the Clark Fork River in Montana in 2008, the Mineral Independent reported at the time. During questioning, Tellness said bad thoughts or voices had told her to drown the baby, according to the paper. The Missoulian newspaper quoted prosecutors as saying that the woman had been in the throes of mental illness at the time of the attempted drowning, the New York Post reported Monday. In 2009, she pleaded guilty to lesser counts of criminal endangerment and was placed on probation for 20 years, according to the Independent. She was also ordered to keep in touch with her psychiatrist, take any medications required, not use alcohol or drugs, and not have contact with Jackson without the consent of her probation officers and treatment providers, the paper reported. The prosecutor said the sentence ensures that this won't happen again, the Post reported. Jackson's father was given custody after the drowning attempt, the Post reported, citing the Missoulian. So if at first you don't succeed, don't worry, you're a woman, the court will let you go ahead and try again. Of course I'm gonna blame men, you twit. Men didn't lock her ass up in a funny farm the first time she tried to kill her kid, did they? Nope. The poor, depressed, little helpless lady just needs some sympathy and a little compassion. Just get her a shrink and we'll forgive and forget all about the child she tried to murder. We wouldn't want to be cruel to the Whammons or anything. So, men's fault. They let her get away with it and provided her with ample opportunity to try again. Voila! She does and succeeds this time. Now the kid is dead, the other seriously fucked up, if he survives, and all because patriarchy. Men didn't treat her like she was an equal and hold her accountable for her actions. Exactly. If we hold her accountable, we're oppressing her. If we don't, and she does something bad, then it's our fault. Bob, how dare you? You can't question the intersectional social justice feminism oppression logic. It is absolute, you bigot. Alright, what's in the funny pile? UC Davis workshop to address mobility justice and bicycle equity. Surely this is not what I'm thinking it is. A rather interesting workshop is coming to the University of California, Davis this November, one involving mobility justice, which examines the intersections of so-called bike equity and sustainable transportation futures. Sponsored by the Campus Feminist Research Institute. The two-day event will include a deep discussion regarding the complexity of equity associated with making bikes and establishing new mobilities, but also will consider power relationships and racism. You know, equity is only complex because you keep trying not to do it. Treat everyone the same. Done. Equity. Unsurprisingly, the concept of mobility justice comes from the critical studies field, as well as from a collective of Black, Indigenous, and people of color working in bicycling and sustainable transportation. Mobility justice examines how the racialized histories of cities and transportation systems limit the mobilities of certain communities in uneven ways. Racial justice scholarship seeks to account for how histories of colonialism and ongoing structures of white supremacy have produced systems of inequality for communities of color. It also examines alternative models that undo harmful practices and foster healing. So, colonialism and white supremacy stripped black and brown people of their God-given bicycles. Sure, fine, whatever. If you can't be serious, then I'm not going to address you seriously. Fruitcakes. That's it for this week. Remember the social justice mantra: women are victims, men are oppressors, and feminism is just about equality. I'll see you all next time.